The emoji, a meta-narrative we use daily. It packs irony, joy, rage, thirst, and sarcasm all into a single pixelated symbol. From ancient cave art to eggplants and clown faces, it's how we've always said the same thing. I feel this, do you get it? A story over 40,000 years in the making, one that starts with charcoal on stone and ends with peach emotes in your DMs. So I want to start this video off with my best caveman impression. Hoo, 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 hoo. Now I know that wasn't great, but the need for that joke will become more apparent as time goes on. We'll move on and talk about the now Professor Emeritus Scott Fallman, who back in 1982 made the first proposal for the smiley face emote. During this period, the internet was very much in its primordial phase, and the only groups who really had access to these early proto-news group messaging boards would have been military, government, and academic institutions. And just as is the case today, everything you read on the internet is true. So people on the campus took this seriously, and there was some slight panic. So after much debate on which characters should denote seriousness and tone in a post, we finally get to the post by Scott himself. And if you were to ask me, Scott's foresight here still holds true today, particularly when he said it is probably more economical to mark things that are not jokes given current trends. Also following modern trends, the immediate post after was about how all the posts before were wrong and we need to encode a much more complicated system with flame value, humor value, boredom value, and so on. Sorry, Jeff, but you overcomplicated it. This wasn't quite enough information for me, so I decided to reach out to Scott himself, and with a carefully crafted email, I asked him a few questions, trying to get his insight of that time period. And this is where I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone about your digital footprint. You have no clue what you are posting and doing today that will come back and bite you in the ass 40 years from now. I didn't have to wait long for his response, and as you can see, he said, I'm trying to focus on my AI research right now, and to avoid spending time talking about emoticons. In case you haven't seen it, this article addresses some of your questions. And if we take a moment looking at this article, we can see he writes about how the smiley face turns 40. And as we get to the bottom, we can see he says, it's strange that 10 minutes spent writing a silly message almost 40 years ago has turned into a thing that I'm best known for. Given a choice, I would rather be famous for my accomplishments in AI research, but it's fun to be a little famous for something, and it certainly has been a fun ride. So with my own projected self-actualization in check, I proceeded forward with my research, but not before responding back to Scott and letting him know how truly sorry I am. Although I can't help but wonder if he had known that the questions I prompted to him were given to me by ChatGPT, would it have changed anything? I fear the irony is lost on this one. Moving out of the 80s and into the 90s and even early 2000s, we truly were in the Wild West era of the internet. During this time, you had cultural hackers, code junkies, and sysadmins alike, all living through their shell prompts and IRC channels. To them, every character mattered. Emoticons were pure, efficient, text-based signals in a bandwidth-starved desert. On the other hand, a tidal wave of normie-friendly platforms, AOL Instant Messenger, MSN, Yahoo, each promising a friendlier, friend-filled future where a smile wasn't typed but clicked. Once a clever keyboard hack had mutated into something graphic, literal. Gone was the sideways smile you built yourself. In came the bright yellow sphere, cheerful, default, a little too perfect. Meanwhile, overseas, Japan's Keitai culture was really evolving the emote landscape. You've probably seen these today, but at the time it was a big deal because it got rid of that need to read the emoji sideways, so everything became more vertically aligned. And then you had places like Korea that were popularizing the more minimalistic blinking smiley face like so, or even Russia, who was using extra parentheses to denote extreme levels of happiness and satisfaction. Regardless of what side of history you may have chose to stand on, it didn't change the fact that emojis were now an integral part of our culture. But back in the West, the lines were a bit more clear. The old guard viewed this ever-changing landscape of emojis as a sort of betrayal of the minimalist and elegant design that they had helped build. But to everyone else, they were fun, easy, and human. By the mid-2000s, the battleground was quiet, but uneasy, although you still had your tech nerds and IRC purists sticking to their ASCII-coded roots. The web was slowly becoming more and more approachable to the non-technical and average user. We saw more corporatized messaging systems, regional variants, and a growing demand for ease over elegance.
But what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen.
When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, it wasn't just a phone. It was the beginning of the end of subtlety as we know it. You see, Japan was already miles ahead of us when it came to mobile culture. They had emojis on their Docomo NTT phones back in 1997. They hid an entire emoji keyboard in the phone, but only unlocked it for Japanese carriers. There was no announcement and no spotlight of this. It was a sort of emoji sleeper cell waiting to be uncovered.
Now, there are a few ways you can do this, like jailbreaking your iPhone or importing a vCard file, but we're going to show you the easiest way, even if it costs you 99 cents.
And if there's one thing I know about us Americans, it's that we hate when anybody has something that we don't have.
Because they have oil and Israel hasn't.
We move closer to the modern day, and we see the rise of a now well-known platform known as Twitch.
Everyone spam cap in the chat, and let's get a nice loud cap. No, this is cringy.
So this emote is a picture of Josh DeSano's face, and it is now the embodiment of sarcasm itself on Twitch. So Josh DeSano is actually a developer for Justin TV, this wild experimental live streaming platform that became Twitch, but was Twitch before Twitch was Twitch. Say that 3 times fast. And when I think of Josh, I can't help but think of our buddy Scott Fallman. Because Josh was a developer who simply uploaded a grayscale picture of his face as part of a set of testing for a new feature. Capo became the default way to say, I'm joking, I'm trolling, I'm better than you, but pretending I'm not. So this wasn't just a new emoji, it was a new precedent. When we talk about emojis as being a sort of meta-narrative, a joke within the joke, you could even say this is where it spawned. And suddenly, emotes weren't just passive reactions anymore. They were symbols of status and identity, saying, hey, do you know what this is? Hey, are you in on the joke? It was when we truly started seeing the meta-narrative functions of emojis come to life. It wasn't just tech nerds online writing sideways ASCII characters anymore. It was a full-blown ecosystem and culture. Of course, Twitch recognized this. They leaned in hard, and they monetized it.
What inspired you to build a second Krusty Krab right next door to the original?
Money!
Now we started to see the rise of custom emote makers, graphics artists, and streamers alike developing their own brand and culture around these emotes. And if you wanted them, and you wanted to use them, and you wanted to spam them in other chats, you had to subscribe. So in 2015, a new player enters the chat. Discord.
Who's my good little kitten?
I am.
Originally designed for gamers seeking better text and voice communication, it's now become the go-to hub for online communities in general. And from day one, Discord allowed servers to upload custom emojis, allowing communities a unique way to express themselves. One of the unique features of Nitro is it let you use your custom server emotes in other servers. So the same trend we saw with Twitch was now spreading. And with the rise of these platforms like Twitch and Discord, and many others, including Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, we started seeing not just up and down likes, but you would respond with an emoji. And nowadays, emojis aren't just text-based characters anymore. We don't have those limitations. In fact, they're not even just images. While those still exist and are still used, you'll often find GIFs and animated emojis, and even people taking the concept of an emoji and applying it through an AR tracker. My favorite example of this is Burnt Peanut.
Rest in hell. Down I tried! Yeah! Oh my god!
You didn't hear that?
So what does the future hold for the emoticon? I'd like to think further AR augmentations, interactive, live created AI dynamic emotes that respond to body temperature and facial reactions and so on and so forth. And if the military can use them in war, I'm sure they will. And remember this, kids. The emoji isn't just a way to denote tone in a message, but rather, in much to Fallman's dismay, it has become a way to express yourself, to belong, and to find identity in a vast landscape of digital culture. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and leave your favorite emoji below in the comment section. I'm Squib. Thanks for watching.